Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Breaking Through Burnout. I am here today with Victoria Albina out of New York City. Welcome, Victoria. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Victoria is a certified life coach and breathwork meditation facilitator. She has a passion for helping women strengthen their relationship with themselves. She's a UCSF trained family nurse practitioner with a master's in public health from Boston University. She is the host of the Feminist Wellness Podcast and has been in health and wellness for over 20 years. So she brings a lot of expertise today, especially during this time that we're all experiencing. So Victoria, again, thank you for being here. Why don't we kick this off? Why don't you share a little bit about your history and about how you got into the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I got into the world of health and wellness because I was really, really sick. So I grew up with terrible irritable bowel syndrome. I turned out to have a number of parasites, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, large intestine bacterial overgrowth. And then I had what results from those things, which is intermittent depression and so much anxiety.
Yeah.
And it took me many, many years and several careers to figure out that yes, the parasites, yes, the bacteria, the leaky gut, the nutrition, all of that was vital. But the real key was looking at my mind, looking at my thoughts and the codependency and perfectionism that were keeping me stuck taking care of everyone else before myself, and really like pushing myself, really gunning all the time to be perfect as though that were like a real thing, which right,
as if you could get there.
Right. Like, what does that even mean? Right. But
Yeah.
In my head, I had this idea of how I could be this best person. And it meant proving myself and validating my worth externally, people pleasing, really putting everyone else ahead of myself and what I thought they wanted me to be. And it really kept my nervous system really on edge, really in that sympathetic activation, and then really in shutdown when I would receive criticism or feedback. And we know that in those two states, you're not digesting, right? You're not making healthy brain chemistry. My adrenals, poor sweet adrenals, were like so exhausted because of this codependency and perfectionism, which was keeping my sex hormones out of balance, my thyroid out of, like everything was out of balance. And it all came back time and again to my thinking. So that's what led me to be a life coach, to be a nurse practitioner, to study public health and how we make change, and to show up to do the work I do now so that no other woman needs to continue to suffer the way I did.
Oh, Victoria, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's always great. So many of the people who have been on this show, they speak of their own experience, and that is what drives us to help others. I mean, I find it so interesting. You have, this formal education, like we said, in public health, but you've taken, and, in what I've read in your work, you've taken a more holistic approach and a different way to look at our health that is really going back to root cause.
Yes.
It's different. It's different than probably what you learned in school. So how have you made that shift, and kind of where, was there a moment, or was it just that transgression of your own health where you said something's got to be different here?
Yeah, it was an incremental process. It was circuitous, to say the least. I am so grateful for the privilege of all the formal education I've had. It's a privilege that less than 1% of this planet gets, and I don't take that privilege lightly. And so I tried the conventional routes. I went to like every gastroenterologist under the sun, every therapist. I tried all the medications, and it didn't work. Like it didn't lead to sustainable healing. And I came to understand that my spirit, my soul, my mind, my body wanted and needed something else. I've always been a very curious little nerd. My favorite compliment, nerd. And so I've always just wanted to, like, what's better than being a nerd? And it's so funny, COVID is showing us like the actual most important people on this human planet, right, are the nerds, right? Like we need scientists, we need clinicians, we need epidemiologists. Like, Hello, nerds.
the unification of the nerds to save the planet.
Getting our moment in the sunshine after all those years in those library basements. Yes. So, right? So, yeah, so the process was incremental. You know, it was, okay, I've got this bellyache and the gastroenterologist couldn't help. What nutrition can I do? Okay, that helped a bit. What supplements can I do? That helped a bit. What further advanced testing can I do? Ooh, I want to do this advanced testing. So I trained with Chris Kresser. I did his year-long program. I learned a lot. Yeah. I applied it. And I stayed sick and my patients stayed sick because of the nervous system piece, right? And so ever the autodidact, I dove in and studied Polyvagal Theory, Steve Porges's work, Deb Dana's work, took all the courses. Yes. And most importantly, like, awareness and learning are vital, but awareness plus learning plus action equals an intentional life and making sustainable, real, long haul, lasting change for our lives. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the idea of, I think when we all come to this place of learning and we realize we're nerding out and we're like, oh, but this feels so good. So it's getting the information, it's nerding out, and then it's helping people be in action, yes, which is such an important piece. So let's dive into the good work you do, Victoria. Let's talk about codependency. How about you? Can you just, I know it's like, okay, this is the big one.
Yeah.
Why don't you just share with us, even just like a general overview of the work you're doing, what it even means, like what are you seeing, and how is this behavior so limiting? What is that there?
Yeah, so I think of codependency as the chronic thought habit. And I talk about things as thought habits because I don't like these labels and saying she's a codependent, I'm a codependent, right? It has this sort of finality to it and this it's pathologizing. Yes. And we don't need that. I don't need that. You don't need that, right? So it's a thought habit, meaning it's changeable. And that thought habit is my mental and emotional wellness are dependent on the emotional wellness of the people around me. So in childhood, that can look like if a parent or a caregiver isn't happy, it's my job to make them happy. Right? To get the straight A's, to get the varsity sports words. I don't know those words. To get the lead in the school play. I know those words. To shine, to be the joker, or if a parent is having behavior that maybe people are judging, then maybe you go in the other route and you fail bigger.
Yeah.
Right? You're a bigger scapegoat. Right? And you take a little bit of that blame energy, that guilt and shame energy off of that parent and put it squarely on your failing self. Right? So codependency is if you're not okay, I'm not okay. How can I make you okay? And it touches every corner of our lives. One of the big things that everyone's talking about on social media right now is this balance between rest and productivity. Right?
Sure.
Like, are you deep cleaning your closets in COVID? Right? Like, yeah, it's a whole thing. And codependency leads us to think we need to do all of the things all of the time and do them perfectly in order to validate ourselves, right? So that someone else will think well of us because we are so scared because we don't think well of ourselves, right? We don't have that worthiness in our hearts. We don't hold it as a truth. Right. And so I hear this from folks in my care all the time, oh, my husband thinks I'm taking too many supplements, so I stopped taking them. My mother-in-law made a big lasagna and I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to offend her. So I just ate it. And, I've been sick for 3 days.
So Victoria, this is so interesting. So okay, so many things to break down here. So of course, this behavior starts way back in patterning, way back when we're young. But I'm sitting here half listening to you talk, half thinking about my own life right now, as we all do, right? But I think what's interesting that I just noticed in this moment is we talk about codependency, and I immediately was thinking to myself about personal relationships I have, it sounds to me like it might not always be with people who are so close to me. It's that some of this behavior is like you're saying on social media. It's people I don't even know. and where I'm trying to measure up in different ways, which I hadn't thought about it, which is so interesting. So,
Yeah.
so now we're all sitting here, I'm sure listening, noticing like, yeah, I see these tendencies. How do you begin to change? What do you do? How do you start?
Yeah. Well, first to the social media, compare and despair is a cornerstone of codependency, right? Like, oh, her pictures are always so beautiful. Oh, she gets so many likes, right? Like, no one's liking my picture, right?
Yeah, it's so
All that
real.
comparison. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
real. It's so, and we do that with siblings. We do that with cousins. We do that with strangers. We do it. And you brought up, these small social interactions. One of the hallmarks of both perfectionism and codependency, I think of them as like twins in a way, right? Like they run in parallel, sometimes moving together, sometimes not. It comes up in these little things, like someone bumps into you in the subway and you say, "Oh, I'm sorry." Right? Because it's about you. You did something wrong. Right? Because all the focus is on you and how terrible you are, how unworthy you are, how you're always messing up. And the thinking, and this is unconscious, I don't think anyone's walking around like thinking this, is that I need to constantly defend and protect myself so the world doesn't see my unworthiness. And so I don't see it. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Right? That constant apologizing. I actually remember this moment 15 years ago. I was driving the car with the person I was dating, and I was like, "Oh, it's the next left." And they were like, "No, it's okay. Like, I know where I'm going." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Brain.
It's like, yeah, it's like all of a sudden internally you're like, I have to get back in good graces. What do I do?
Right.
I've got to push myself down so I can get back in their view of good graces.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
So fascinating. Yeah. And insidious, right? It's sneaky, right? And people often think, and then I'll get to your what do we do question, because that's so vital. I want people to have those action steps. But people think if I didn't grow up with alcohol use or abuse, substance use or abuse, well, then I can't be codependent, right? Because that's like those people. But I don't think it's so. I have a deep belief in intergenerational codependency, that it's a thing that we're taught, that's modeled to us. So the alcohol user or abuser could be 2, 3, 4 generations back, and your entire matriline or patriline, like the people in your life, learned to use codependency as a tool, a survival skill, because it is a skill and should be celebrated as such, right?
Yep.
They used this skill to survive. And then, so your great grandma learned that. So then your grandma learned that. So then your mama learned that. So then you learned that, and you teach your kids that. And so it continues on until we stop, until we pause, until we say, this ends with me. And in answer to your how question, we use the 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, action. And then we step into the thought work protocol, which is what I teach my life coaching clients as a way to put an end to this thought process and to make your life better in every possible way. So awareness, right? Learning to become your own watcher, right? That meta thinker, to be able to watch yourself thinking. It's a real skill, and it's a skill a lot of us just, again, don't have until we pause to cultivate it, right? And so noticing, right, thinking about burnout, the framework and the theme for this summit, how do you notice the burnout long beforehand, right? Before you reach that, like, oh my God, I can't point. Maybe it's a rumbling in your belly. Maybe it's a text from your boss and you get like queasy. Maybe your shoulders start to inch up towards your neck, or you feel a lump at your throat chakra, tightness, right? It's starting to raise that awareness of your somatic experience, your body telling you something ain't right here, and to give it credence. And that's the challenging part, I find, for most people with these thought habits, is believing the signals from your body, because for so long we held them down. We pushed them away and pretended they weren't there because survival was more important. And that makes sense.
The feelings in the body, Victoria. Thank you for going there. It's in this work, it's so important. And I often find myself asking people, how does that feel when it came up? What were you experiencing? And it is a trained response because so often the first response is, I don't know. But it's here. We can tap in and understand it. I also think, though, that there is a general acceptance of when these things come up in our hustle culture of, it made me queasy, but this is what it takes. Or, my body is killing me, but I got to get to the top. And then in terms of burnout and how we're hustling, that's yet another challenge. Even when you become aware, like you said, it's back to that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so the second step is acceptance, right? And so that can be very challenging for people. And the way I frame it, what I think is most important, is acceptance of the fact that these thoughts, these habits, these patterns live within you and came from somewhere, right? And so people want to do this, like with the feelings, like, okay, that's not real. Like, I'm not like spinning in codependency. I'm not spinning in perfection. I'm not a perfectionist. I mess everything up. That's not me. So right, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know. Guilty as charged.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought that for forever. I was like, no, I can't be a perfectionist. Like, I do the paper last minute, right? That can't. Yeah. I'm not perfect. My schedule is a hot mess, right? Like, where's my phone? You know, like, I don't know, where are my glasses right now? I don't know where they are. I'm not a perfectionist. Look at my mess. Acceptance that these things are happening, these things are real, these thought habits are pervasive, in part touching on every part of yourself, right? When you push yourself. Awareness, acceptance, and then taking action is where we use the thought work protocol. And just in summation, it's a way to look at using science, using the neuroscience of behavior change, to look at all circumstances as completely neutral, and to recognize that thinking a situation, a circumstance, an experience, a thought is good or bad is a choice. That we have a thought in our human minds that makes us believe that something's good or bad. It's awesome or it's terrible, right? However dramatic you want to be about it. That thought then creates a feeling within our bodies, and we take action based on our feelings. So the simple way to explain is, I don't think anyone crosses the street because they're standing there and they're like, I don't think a car is coming. You use your interoception, your neuroception, you use your body to feel, is there safety?
Yes.
Right? And then you look and you think and you feel, and then you take action. And every action has a result because physics. And so those results, right? A string of results or outcomes, that is your life. And you are choosing the life that you want to live with every thought.
Wow. You are choosing. You are making a choice. It's a different place to come from. It's a more empowering place to come from, rather than saying, hey, this is handed to you, deal with it.
Yeah.
You have a choice in how you see things and how you respond.
Yeah. And of course, we need to name systems of oppression, right? We need to name the patriarchy, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, racism, xenophobia. We need to name these things and recognize that not everyone's dealt a fair hand, and not everyone has the range of choices and the privileges that many of us have in terms of the actions you could take.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So I think it's really important to hold that duality, right?
Yeah, and hold that space of where you're coming from.
Yeah, and honor the fact that many of us live under a multitude of oppressive systems.
Yeah. Oh, Victoria, this is I'm so interesting and so fascinating. But you said perfectionism, that you caught my attention when you said, but I can't find my glasses. How could I be struggling with perfectionism? But and that's interesting. It caught my attention. I was like, yeah, these are the things of if I think perfectionist, it is like by the book, all lined up, but not so, you're saying.
Well, no, because perfectionism can lead us to present as a hot mess, because we are keeping ourselves from doing the things, let me just say the things, because we're so scared to fail. right? Which is why I wrote the grant application the night before and wrote the paper the morning it was due, and right, didn't get ahead of the work and didn't make the organizational system, right? Like one of the things that I teach is around productivity and calendaring, because it's so important as a way to shape and frame our lives. And I didn't do it for years. I was flying by the seat of my pants. And what I came to understand was that perfectionism and codependency were underlying that, because I was scared if I made a calendar, like made a schedule and then didn't stick to it, I would beat myself up. Like, oh, Vic, you said you were going to do X at 10 and it's 10:30 and you didn't do X. Like, what is wrong with you? Just get with the program. Do the thing.
And so perfectionism it is a way of keeping ourselves safe, out of failure, it sounds like.
Yeah. And that very concept, right, of safety and failure is predicated on the safety, what I think we truly most deeply fear. And I'm stepping out of a trauma framework here, but
Sure.
in the like in person with yourself, I think what most of us feel most unsafe about is our own potential response to ourselves,
Mm.
the way we'll react, right? The way we'll beat ourselves up, what we'll call ourselves, right? And how that might then reify a story we heard as a child. You have to be perfect, you're worthless, right? That parental, I sacrificed everything for you, right? I wish I'd never had you, right? Either extreme or somewhere in the middle can lead us to that, out of that place of ventral vagal, which is the safe and secure connected part of our vagus nerve, right? The polyvagal theory, and can make us unsafe with ourselves primarily, because we'll bring that mean part in, right?
It's also premeditated, Victoria. Like we're thinking that we take action. We're thinking we'll fail. We're then preparing to beat ourselves up. It's like we're preparing for this negative streamline of events or domino of events over and over again. But to
Right.
catch it earlier and just notice the thoughts and notice that I have been in this string of thinking, there's the opportunity to shift and a change.
Absolutely. And also, I'm always a nerd's gonna nerd. So let's talk about the reptilian brain, right? And so our
Yeah.
reptilian brain, way back here, the brainstem, this part of our brain, as opposed to our neocortex, our prefrontal cortex, which is executive function, our reptilian brain is really focused on the basics: survival, airway, breathing, circulation, airway, breathing, circulation. Is there a lion? Is it going to eat me? Is there a lion? Is it going to eat me? Can I rest? Lion, right? Like it's really focused on these things. And if you've encoded failure in your brain as a bad thing, then yes, your body will absolutely respond to the slightest whiff of failure as a horrifying outcome. You'll take everything personally. You'll make it about you. You'll make it about how you're no good, because you should, if it's encoded as a lion attack. And so the intervention there with love, compassion, and gentleness, always, always, is to pause, to engage your prefrontal cortex by being your own watcher, thinking about your thoughts, getting ventral vagal, social, safe, connected, which if there's not another human where you're quarantined, you can look in the mirror and smile at yourself. You can resource someone you love, a loving parent, a grandparent, Anne of Green Gables, Dr. Maya Angelou, right? You can bring that energy in to support you, to help you get back into your most thinking part, and can remember what I teach. Failure is never a bad thing. Failure is our goal. Because if you failed, it means you tried. You tried. You said yes to investing in yourself. You said yes to the course, to grad school. You said yes to the Instagram Live, which are petrifying sometimes. You said yes, right? You risked failure. And that's a beautiful thing, right? I love the Pema Chodron quote: fail, fail better, fail again. Fail, fail again, fail better. Sorry, Pema, something like that. So
we'll better our nerding skills next time.
Oh, well.
But such an interesting thought to see failure in that positive light.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You took the action, and that takes, honestly, Victoria, it just takes guts. Like it takes stepping out of yourself and doing it and going for it.
Yeah. And knowing that you have made a firm promise not to beat yourself up, regardless of the outcome. Right? The outcome. Yeah, the outcome doesn't define you. The fact that you tried does. And the fact that you picked yourself up and took courageous action and tried again and tried again and tried again. That's what defines you. That's beautiful.
That is beautiful and great in a way that we can do that. We can try on whatever level, whether it's the tiniest thing, whether it's the grandest thing. It's all good.
Yeah.
Victoria, this is so interesting. There's a couple things. One, I still want to make sure we reach people where they're sitting today, hoping they're healthy. You and I were chatting before this started about our experiences now in COVID and the work you're doing. And you were talking about the idea of, hey, during COVID, there was this idea that we were all going to clean our closets, right? And and there was the to-do list. And I've even done a little bit of work now in telling people that, like, I do have this list of things of house projects. I have not done one. So what are you seeing, and how are you helping folks right where we are just kind of notice those thoughts again?
Yeah, well, I'm noticing what you are, right? Which is this external pressure to be some kind of quarantined person.
Yeah.
Right? Sure. Like as though a number one, like perfect, like as though that were a thing, as though there were like a right way to do quarantine, like, what is that, you guys? And like, who is the arbiter of that? Who gets to decide that? And who are you measuring up against, right? You know, like, okay, so an organizing professional did a video about organizing. That's literally her job. Right?
And she's good at it, and she loves it.
Exactly.
It's an interesting question, Victoria. Who holds the standard for the quarantine operation? Who's telling us we're doing it right and wrong?
I mean, Dr. Fauci, but yes.
And we love him, and he's doing a good job.
Fauci.
True.
But yes, yeah. Beyond the public health measures, who is this like arbiter of like, you really succeeded at quarantine, right?
It's so true.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the failure piece, right? Like we fear that at the end of this, we won't have met some invisible internal standard, and we'll beat ourselves up. But if your constant promise, right? If your thought is, I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to give everything equal airtime, which is the name of I've been doing these special COVID podcasts. The last one I talked about giving it all equal airtime, right? So if you're trying to work and your brain is like, ugh, you just need to rest. And then another part of your brain is like, don't be lazy. Don't rest. A
little bit of conflict that we're all experiencing.
Totally, right? Awareness, acceptance, action, right? Equal airtime is about accepting that there are these conflicting thoughts and feelings and storylines and narratives within your mind, body, and spirit, and just deciding, I'm going to give it all equal airtime. I'm going to sit and think about, like I'm being lazy in the following 12 ways. Go me. And you know what? I'm also being productive in the following 12 ways. Go me. I'm going to brag here. I refilled the salt shaker last night.
That's a good one.
Come on, right?
Ours is actually low and our pepper's empty.
Not to be all you're failing at COVID quarantine,
but I should do that after this interview.
I think it's pretty high on the to-do list. So
for many people, it's interesting, these tiny things. And I think I'm noticing also, Victoria, that the grace you're offering, as this goes on longer, I'm finding it even a little more challenging as I go. It's like the longer I'm distanced from the things I love, the less motivated I am. And it's taking even even a greater awareness, a greater acceptance, and a little bit of love for myself, just to say, it does feel like it's getting harder for a reason, Megan, and that's okay.
Yeah. So both holding that truth that this is a superb, colossal, global stressor. For some of us, it's a trauma, not everyone, but for many of us, this feels traumatic, may bring up old trauma, old stress, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to be hypervigilant. It's okay to be hyperreactive, hyperactivated right now. It's also okay to be hypoactivated, to be in that dorsal vagal shutdown where you're just on the couch or you're just under the comforters. Like, it's okay. And I'll also say that motivation, when we look at the meme world, it seems like motivation is just like this lightning bulb that hits you. And I hear this a lot. Like, I'm just like waiting for inspiration. I'm waiting for motivation, like some Grecian muse like appear right from a cloud. Like Zeus is going to send them down to bless your home with blogs or podcast episodes or whatever is on your list. But I think it's quite the opposite, right? Like, of course, there's things that inspire us, but motivation is an internal process, right? Like, that call has to come from inside the house. Just simply saying, I should be motivated, and shoulding on yourself is not going to make you motivated, right? Because that thought is, I am failing at being motivated, which is going to make you feel like a failure. The action you'll take is to either ruminate on that or to sit in that discomfort, right? And to sit there and beat yourself up. And the outcome is not getting anything done, not getting motivated. And so you can decide that motivation is a feeling you want to create with an active thought. So a thought like, I'm going to channel motivation, I'm going to be motivated for the next half hour. And that's a conscious choice that I'm making. And giving your brain parameters, because there is no better way. Well, there's a lot of better ways, but one very effective way to send yourself into sympathetic activation, fight or flight, lions are coming, is to push your brain to do something it doesn't want to do, particularly if you have a trauma history, and who doesn't, with no parameters, right? So I'm going to be motivated. Your brain's like, that's very scary.
We're not going there.
Not do that, right? But like, all right, brain, right? We just had a really nice lunch, got a lot of great protein. I'm feeling awesome. Let's drink a bunch of water, do a little movement, and we're going to get motivated on this project for 1 hour, 1 minute. Right? Like, it doesn't matter, right? It's about building those slow habits and really remembering that you get to choose to create motivation internally.
That's nice. It feels so much nicer. Victoria, this time has flown. And I just have to say that the way you explain concepts that for many people listening feel dark and frightening and maybe even made them nervous to tune in to this interview, knowing that we all understand these things and feel these things. I just appreciate so much the way you explain them and the way you bring a little bit of humor and lightness. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Well, thank you for providing the space and being of service to the world through your work.
Oh, well, thank you. Victoria, how can people find you and reach out to you, learn more about your work, and get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on the social medias, Victoria Albina Wellness. It's the same on the Instagram and the Facebook. I'm on Instagram a lot more these days. I just find it a lot more pleasant. My website is victoriaalbina.com. If you head on over to that homepage, at the top of the page, you'll see a place to get my free meditations. Nice. You can also subscribe to my podcast, Feminist Wellness. It's on Apple Podcasts for free. It's weekly. So it's free on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, all the things. It's on all the things.
It's all over the place. And so is Victoria. And everything she just said, of course, we'll share in the blast of this interview itself so that you can get in touch with her and continue this conversation that's so valuable. Victoria, one last question before I set you free here. Where in your life do you feel most creative?
Oh, I love that question. Well, I think there's a sort of pre-COVID and a current COVID answer to that. So my first gut, like from my spirit answer is in nature. And it doesn't matter what that nature is, the ocean, the mountains, the high desert in New Mexico, the woods of New Hampshire, Rhode Island, the nature, always the nature.
Always. Yes.
Yeah. And these days, here safe at home, grateful to live indoors as always, but extra right now. Here in New York City in quarantine the last, 2.5 months.
Wow.
I'm really tapping into my creativity through my content and being of service. I think it's actually the thing that's kept me grounded and sane and feeling safe and well and joyful in this world, is putting out extra podcast episodes. I have a really exciting course about codependency and perfectionism. And so building that and building those modules and the meditations and making breathwork soundtracks for that offering. That's been where I've been pouring my creativity into all of that service and creating content for the world.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you from myself and from everybody listening for doing that, because I can't imagine that so many people will want to check that out and join in your creative effort. Victoria, again, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. We are glad you're safe and healthy.
Thank you. Likewise. And I hope that everyone watching at home is also safe and healthy and is well and remembers to take care of yourself, because you matter. My love, you matter.
Oh, thank you so much for those words. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And we will see you next time on Breaking Through Burnout. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.